The year is 2020, I just parried Gwyn into submission and I was riding the high of completing my very first Souls game. I wanted more. I needed more. I scrambled to the Xbox marketplace and saw Dark Souls 2, the next in the franchise. Surely it would satiate my need for the glory I had experienced in the first game. I downloaded it, loaded the game, and played 30 minutes of it before I decided it was the worst thing I had ever played in my entire life. I uninstalled and promptly forgot about it until now. It's finally time to give Dark Souls 2 a fair shot. I chose to be unoriginal and picked the Knight class before browsing my starting gifts and choosing the bonfire aesthetic because it looked the most interesting. Then, in typical fashion for Souls character creation, I pushed some sliders as far as they could go to create a beautiful monstrosity. Granny started yapping and I didn't have the heart to tell her she needed some Altoids, so I kept my mouth shut and then went on my way. Now, I do remember some of this game, again about the first 30 minutes-ish. I doffed my armor and complained about the rolling animation before making my way through the things betwixt, twixting some enemies as I went. And let me just say, some of the parry animations in this game are pretty awesome, +1 to the Dark Souls 2 cool score, and -1 to my cool score for forgetting that gravity exists. After seeing my undead beef jerky ass for the first time, I decided to put my armor back on because that is a face only Aldia could love. Get it? I made my way to Majula and talked to Souls Mommy. Rare to see a woman in a FromSoft game with shoes on, but I digress. She gave me an Estus flask and I was stoked to have my first cup of that undead OJ. I talked to Saludan, who reminded me of my own mortality and gave me depression along with a good lore dump. I met the rude blacksmith Lenegrast outside of his shop, and boy does he have all the attitude of Andre without any of the charisma. I met Shalquar, the cat, enchanté Shalquar, who promptly made fun of me for talking to a cat. I explored more, talked to Moulin, got harassed by 3 little piggies, and then decided it was time to be on my way to the Forest of Fallen Giants. The first thing I noticed besides the hippo's ridiculous dump truck was the 18 football fields away that enemies can aggro from. There were some undead asleep on the job, and company rules stated that this behavior shall be met with steel to the face. Rough working conditions out there. I attempted a strike from above and learned 2 things. 1, don't mess with fall damage, and 2, plunging attacks are harder to pull off than the freshness seal on a bottle of ketchup. I really love the fog gates in the old FromSoft games where you don't know if it's going to be more level or a boss. Add that to the list of things to bring back to Souls games, along with tail cuts and barehanded parrying. I found myself clearing out areas very carefully compared to how I approached these games on a second playthrough and beyond. But I also think I was foolishly thinking that clearing the game with as few deaths as possible would be impressive to some degree, but like, who cares? I made it to the second bonfire of the area and talked to the old merchant lady who laughed maniacally before I purchased the traveling merchant hat to raise my item discovery. She also had Lenegrast's key in stock and I promptly opened the door for him to get to work. He was ungrateful to say the least. Back to the forest, I ran into the rejected 5th Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, and safe to say he took it pretty hard. I made some renovations to the bonfire room, but I don't think it's up to code, so don't tell anyone. Then I met Pate. I don't really trust this guy, and I'd prefer he go hither and thither on his own merry way. I continued on and was so distracted by shiny objects that I got Dark Souls 2'd when I wasn't looking. Oops. I was so frazzled that I fell victim to one of the classic blunders. The most famous is never get involved in a land war in Asia, but only slightly less well known is this: don't open every chest willy-nilly because mimics exist. Ooh, more shiny things. I sure hope no one like a boss from slightly later in the game comes to stop me from taking them. Unfortunately, not even this Mark 1 Iron Man suit could stop me from collecting my trinkets. The damage numbers I was putting up didn't make me feel hopeful, but luckily a stray undead came around and decided it was his job to take out the protagonist. On the topic of being greedy, I nearly got cowabunged by another turtle man, and in a panic, I ran through a fog gate, found a shortcut, took an elevator where I sent a guy up that I'll completely forget about later before coming face to face with my first boss. The cutscene perfectly set up this very cinematic and intense fight, and I definitely had a hard time taking out the uncut giant. Sorry, the last giant. Damage was very good for our +0 weapon, and it was the age-old game of stay between the legs and spam R1 as much as you can. I was, however, very pissed off about the messages that just stay in the arena while I'm fighting the boss. Whose idea was that? That's stupid. The fire giant could learn a thing or two from this guy. He doesn't need a whole cutscene to rip off his limb. I learned from my looting earlier, stayed patient, didn't get greedy, and the last giant goes down first try. Why don't you take a shot every time I forget that I have to level up at the Emerald Herald? Oh, she said the thing! I decided to upgrade my health, stamina, and iframes. Yes, iframes are an upgradable stat in this game. Get Dark Souls 2'd, nerd. I explored more of the area with my new key and decided to practice some parries. I may not be able to produce the symbol of the king, but I can produce these hands. And just like that, I was back on my greedy bullshit, angering the masses and dying to gravity. I decided it was time to go through Pate's totally not a trap portcullis, and you'll never guess what happened. I managed to slay the masses and get out by the skin of my teeth, and Pate rewarded me with garbage. I met the last giant's lost cousin and said hello before finding some loot and cosplaying Inigo Montoya. Tell the six-fingered man I say what's up. Also, that's like the second Princess Bride reference in the span of 5 minutes. I kinda gotta chill. I explored some scaffolding that was definitely not up to code, got laid out by Master Oogway, and then went down a tunnel that was guarded by a fire salamander. Either way, more loot for me. I felt like I had explored a lot of this area and decided it was time to go back to Majula and explore another path. And thus started my playthrough-long complaint of doors not staying open. Yes, I was born in a barn. I don't get why they can't just stay open. Anyway, buckle up, because it's time for hides. Tower of Flame. I introduced myself to the doorman, grabbed a bonfire, and said hello to the other local residents. I pulled a lever and ran past the majority of the annoying fellows before entering the arena of boss number 2. The Dragon Rider. If I see one comment about, oh my gosh, you could have done the Dragon Rider cheese. How about you play the game? Also, I didn't know the cheese. The damage wasn't bad, and honestly, going from Elden Ring and Night Rain to Dark Souls 2, everything kind of felt like it was in slow motion. I love the slow, telegraphed attacks and the large punish windows. It's very easy for my small pea brain to comprehend. I got greedy towards the end, but it doesn't matter, because I'm always greedy, never punished, and the Dragon Rider goes down first try. I go to the Emerald Herald for a bit of health and strength, and then go back to say hi to Licia. No, I'm not from these parts. I took the elevator down to a deeply upsetting water area, ran from a basilisk, and found myself in Gank City. No Man's Wharf. Boy oh boy, if there's anything I hate in Souls games, it's those damn dogs. But nothing is worse than the Dark Souls 3 dogs. As far as upsetting enemies go, these things score pretty high on that list, but I expertly opened the Mimic chest to deal with my problems for me. Always greedy, never punished, and I found the great sword. Can't wait to use that. This area for the most part didn't strike my fancy, but after a few untimely deaths and a bit of exploring, I rang the bell. And then I instantly died to Bloodhound Knight Darrowell. After more exploration and many more deaths, I was getting bored of No Man's Wharf and decided it was time to go back to the Tower of Flame. Turns out everyone is mad at you when you kill their friend. Oops. I ran through the area and met a dragon and realized I may have to rethink my strategy. I also picked up the Ring of Binding, which single-handedly saved my sanity through this entire playthrough. Every time you die, your maximum HP goes down eventually until it's 50%. The Ring of Binding limits this max HP loss to 25%. Yeah, I'm a filthy casual. What's it to ya? Even with my newfound power, the dragon was proving quite difficult, especially with the help of his buddies. There's a common theme for this run, at least for the first little bit. When the going gets tough, the tough gets going. It's me. I'm the tough. And I decided to exhaust the third path from Majula and ran into this guy. I forget what his name was, but he was in quite the pickle. And I was too, because I really wanted to kill him for that sword. My beloved Moonlight. But I carried on and killed some enemies with surprisingly large nut sacks before my path was ultimately blocked by a statue. And just like that, I'm back to the Forest of Fallen Giants, finding new uses for my soldier key. The Flamberge were pretty annoying, so I ran right past them into, guess who? The Pursuer. It was finally time for my revenge. Well, maybe not that time. My second attempt was almost glorious, but it was foiled by a poorly timed roll. The Pursuer was the first boss fight that actually felt like a boss fight. I couldn't go in swinging and hope for the best, just getting by on life gem healing, but it felt like I should actually try to learn the moves of the boss. A lot of the Pursuer's combos felt really satisfying to dodge and strafe, and it was certainly a battle of attrition considering my +0 starting weapon. But before long, I was really hitting my groove, and the Pursuer goes down on try number 3. And then I was immediately reminded that enemies don't drop aggro. Fun times. With my souls, I decided not to level, but purchase a fragrant branch and a Pharos Lockstone. After emptying my pockets, the merchant moved to Majula, and I finally had access to infinite life gems. I went back to the statue of the lady and used the branch on her. Rosabeth hacked up a lung before thanking me, and then promptly asked for a handout. I'd like to take a second to thank the sponsor of this video, me. I know I don't really pump out content, but if you want to see more, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, become a member if you want the fun perks, and be sure to check out my Twitch if you want to see the runs live. After dripping her out, I pulled the lever she was hogging and got bombarded by more nutsacks with the big nutsacks. And also a basilisk. Using my quick thinking, I channeled my inner Jonathan Joestar and ran as fast as I could. I made it to the Shaded Woods before getting greeted by more of these guys. It's no wonder they're all mad. They must have excruciating back pain from carrying that load around all day. Before long, I made it to a bonfire and I was at a crossroads, where I decided to try my luck against the little pig dog things. They led me to a giant hippo man, and after doing absolutely no damage to him, I decided to press on and found another big door. Still no symbol, but time to parry this asshole into oblivion. Seemingly at a dead end, it was time to traverse the path with the fog. A thick mist covering the woods? Sure, I can get behind that. But the invisible enemies that don't let you lock onto them is diabolical, and I will never forgive you, From Software. I pivoted to the third unexplored path and discovered that these unlock-onable enemies are not just in the fog, but they're elsewhere too. They also seem to be designed to mimic the ghosts of online players. Fool me once, shame on you. I was told to seek my dear souls and then got sent back to the bonfire. That's enough of the woods for now though, because I completely forgot that I didn't explore past the Pursuer's boss arena. I curl up in a ball, not in game but in spirit, and I'm whisked off to the Lost Bastille. I grab my loot and light the bonfire before meeting the Pursuer, again, except this time a little more angry, and with magic. I felt like I was doing fairly well. I mean, I just beat the guy, how hard can he be back from the grave? And then, turns out he has a phase 2. Ish. It's a good thing the curse effect is borderline useless in Dark Souls 2. When the curse status bar fills, it reduces your maximum HP as if you died, but I had the Ring of Binding on and I'd already lost as much as I could, so it was just a funny little bar that didn't affect me. I was no match for the Pursuer's Roid Rage at this point, so I pressed on and met a peculiar looking NPC named Lucatiel. She didn't really like me at first, but she quickly changed her tune and said I could hit her up if I ever needed help. Thanks for the offer, hot stuff, but true gamers don't use summons. I used a branch to make this guy soft again and then was swarmed by a bunch of idiots who wanted me dead. Why do doors close when I die? Who designed this? I just want to talk. If there's one way to combat the gank in this game, it's luring enemies through a choke point. And after some very calculated R1 spam and taking things very slowly, I was face to face with some fog. But I was also very scared and opted to take a ladder and explored a bit more before almost getting Dark Souls 2'd. Back to the fog, it was time for a triple threat, the Ruined Sentinels. Astonishingly, I felt like my plus nothing weapon was still doing decent damage, but despite my best efforts and the most insane hitbox I've ever seen, I was the one ruined in the end. For my second try, I imbued my sword with piss and was able to take out the first sentinel, but after taking some fall damage and trying to heal, I got absolutely blasted from downtown. It was time to pivot, so I oozed on my sword and decided it was time to say hello to the coked out pursuer once again. After getting blasted a few times, I finally upgraded my weapon to +2 and came back with a vengeance. With more damage and an insane aura buff from strafing the thrust attack, I was able to put Pursuer 2.0 in the dirt before he even did the curse attack. Also, have I mentioned how I hate dogs in FromSoft games? Oh, she said the thing! I level my strength and dex because it's finally time to wield the motherfucking great sword, baby! Big sword, big strength, big damage. I stripped down so I can at least mid-roll and I reinforced the great sword to +1. And let's just say, I like big swords. Ruined Sentinels time, baby. I was now doing huge damage, but failed to retain the information that they jump up and attack if you knock them down. The moveset of the greatsword took a bit to get used to, but the two-handed double R1 combo puts out an insane amount of damage and this thing's barely upgraded. With one sentinel out of the way, it was time to take on the other two. I jumped off the ledge with confidence, but failed to remember that I was fighting Captain America and got hit with a shield throw 1-2 combo. Pivot time! Back in No Man's Wharf, I decided to explore a bit more and I ran into Lucatiel, who just stood there and watched me die. She said she would help me if I ever needed it, but I guess my screams in agony weren't incentive enough for her to step in. But how could I stay mad at her? She gave me a human effigy and a lore dump, and I finally decided it was time to explore the ship that I called in earlier. I found an old man on the docks who called me an idiot in the nicest way possible, and then I smacked down the shortcut and boarded the boat before entering the bedchamber of the Flexile Sentry. I took some early blows, nothing I can't usually recover from, but I was scared being so low on life gems. This time I was the one blessed by the Dark Souls 2 hitboxes, and pair that with the absolutely bonkers damage numbers done by the greatsword, it looked like I might just win. I expended my last life gem and it was time to lock the in. I played the rest of the fight more passively than my greedy brain wanted to and only really punished the big slam attack of Mr. Maceface. After a poorly timed dodge landed me one hit from death, it was time to greed the damage and squeak out the win. First try Flexile. It's impressive, I know. I ran around touching random buttons and sent the ship off on an adventure, but being so low on health and not a bonfire in sight, I decided to homebone back to Majula to secure my levels. It was time for the bear to seek lest and put some levels in strength and health and then go back to ride the boat and keep exploring. I took the elevator up and to my surprise I found myself in the Lost Bastille, except only this time I was hitting it from the back. If you're wondering, I still hate dogs in FromSoft games. But I opened the shortcut, broke the towers, and barely escaped with my life before getting one-tapped by a wall in the next room. Pivot time! Back in Hides, I wanted to give the dragon another go with my new sword, but after getting absolutely laid out instantly by the Gankfest, I came up with an idea. In all the other Souls games, if you save and quit and then reload the game, it resets the enemy positions and aggro. Well, not in Dark Souls 2. Isn't that fun? I went back to Majula to stock up on life gems, and then I kited every single enemy in the area to come watch me give the dragon a piece of my mind. And it dropped something that I wasn't able to loot because everyone was so eager to congratulate me on my first dragon kill. I sure hope it wasn't important. I pulled the lever lowering the bridge and it was time for a reunion with an old friend. Ornstein. I mean, the old dragon slayer. Definitely not Ornstein. This fight was absolute cinema, one of my favorite bosses from Dark Souls, in Dark Souls 2, with the same moves, some new moves, and a goofy-ass running animation. Look at that. Who did that? I've killed this guy so many times, and without the help of Fatty, it's a cakewalk of a fight. The damage from the greatsword is still massive, and I used all my willpower not to get greedy. However, the Dark Souls 2 lock-on system feels like it might be the worst thing in the entire game. I am quite literally kissing distance from a boss locked on and my attacks go wide. I know this has something to do with like the directional stick overriding the lock-on, but it just feels so weird and clunky. And it led to some very frustrating moments during the entire playthrough. But hey, just get good, right? And get good I did. I had a few close calls and some greedy swings, but Ornstein was put down first try. Say hi to Smo for me, buddy. I got the Leo ring to increase the effectiveness of my thrusting and then looted one of the most important things in the game for my sanity. You remember the Cleric's Parma. I went to Majula for health, strength, and life gems, and then went to the Lost Bastille once again. I hate dogs in FromSoft games. I also hate these enemies that just explode. I found some hidden treasure and got Sen's Fortress up to another room with more upsetting enemies, and then I crossed the bridge and entered the fog to Sinner's Rise. I snagged a bonfire before spotting the Bell Gargoyles, and then took an elevator down to another upsetting water section that I could barely traverse. And coming out the other side, it was time to fight the Lost Sinner. You just know it's gonna be sick when it's a cutscene boss. The Lost Sinner turned out the lights, quickly exploiting my fear of the dark as a Canadian, and here I thought mental torture like that was against the Geneva Convention. But if you want to play hardball, let's dance. And this fight did feel like a dance, although I had 2 left feet and didn't know the song. I took the first few minutes to test the waters and just played to live and learn the boss instead of attacking. This fight really made me appreciate the healing system of life gems. The ability to stack them and simply healing over time is such a forgiving feature, and honestly it's what allowed me to stay up so long during the fight. The Sinner has very slow and telegraphed attacks, but they do an insane amount of damage, and the moves that cause your lock-on to drop off are especially annoying. The lock-on was once again the bane of my existence, but the damage of the greatsword is just so huge, and the surplus of life gems helped me stay in the fight. This fight also made me despise the Dark Souls 2 rolling, because there were many times where I felt like I dodged at the perfect moment, only to realize I had taken the full damage of the attack without realizing it. Guess I need more adaptability, huh? At the end of it all, I don't really feel like I learned the boss, and I don't know if it was a fluke, but the Lost Sinner goes 6 feet under on my first go. Absolute Sinnerma. Great soul embraced, baby. Don't let anyone tell you that strength builds aren't easy. Also, apparently you can turn the lights on in the arena. That would have been nice to know. I opened the door and lit my first primal bonfire, and you know what? I'll say it. I was absolutely loving this game. The Herald congratulated me on my win, and to celebrate, I got a few more levels of strength, endurance, and vigor. I also found my first Estus shard. It was time to put on my big boy pants and traverse the fog of the shaded woods, and this time I just ran aimlessly until I found a staircase and found myself at a little bonfire. Oh boy, more enemies that I can't lock onto. What immaculate game design. I got invaded for the first time, and we had a great sword measuring competition, and to my surprise his was bigger. These cursed pots are a thing. They sure suck. I met a big scorpion who was a man of few words, and then I pressed on and totally branched on this guy. Fragrantly. I can't stress enough how great the double R1 combo is on this sword. I killed this big guy and got branch blocked from progression, so decided to pivot for now. It's fall damage time, baby. I purchased the Silver Cat ring from Shalquar and decided to drop down the well in Majula. That's right, Souls games are not action RPGs. They're precision platformers carefully veiled by big swords and satisfying parry sounds. I took the path partway down to the Grave of Saints, where I was greeted by rats. If there's one thing worse than a dog in a FromSoft game, it's a rat in a FromSoft game. I ball-gagged the stone face to lower the bridge, but before pressing on, I decided to explore a little bit more and found myself a bonfire and the best boss ever, the Royal Rat Vanguard. Poiseless and afraid, I was getting caught on every stone statue in the arena, and I, died. To the rats. First try Lost Sinner, but I can't kill a damn rat. Take 2 was much better as the boss rat finally decided to show up. It's crazy to me that this fight is basically the inspiration for Deacons of the Deep. Thankfully, spotting the boss rat isn't hard at all, and it goes down to a few R1s of the greatsword, but not before I compliment its haircut. Totally radical, bro. I upgraded my greatsword to +4, turning it into an excellent sword, and then I joined the Rat King Covenant and gave him a rat tail. I fell through the floor and realized how much I absolutely love FromSoftware level design before hating it again with more precision platforming. I did a sick plunge attack onto the crystal lizard, and the damn loot fell through the bridge. My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined. On the ground, I tested out my newly upgraded sword and then progressed down to the worst area in the game so far, the gutter. This place is the hideous love child of Blighttown and the Tomb of the Giants, and oh boy was it painful. I grabbed the bonfire and also a pile of dung before exploring the area in pitch darkness. The game was clearly trying to teach me about the mechanic of using torches, both in my hand and using them to light braziers along the way to make traversing the area more bearable. Did I interact with this mechanic? Absolutely not. Did I still choose to complain about it with every step I took? You bet I did. I smartened up and used a flame butterfly to spark a torch, and I finally started to light things up as I went. I wasn't the biggest fan of the one-handed moveset on the greatsword, but it was a small price to pay to, you know, see things. The timer above the torch made me unreasonably stressed out for absolutely no reason. I think in my entire playthrough, I was nowhere near running out of torch time. But I think it adds to the urgency and intensity of traversing places like this. What's the most upsetting thing about the area, I hear you ask? Well, I would say it's the eldritch horror monster that resembles an unholy mix between a hand and a butthole. I got invaded by Maneater Melinda the Butcher. I duked it out with the axe-wielding woman, and the reach of my sword was just enough to secure victory. I hit the jackpot and collected my shinies, lit the place up more, and slaughtered some more upsetting enemies before getting invaded again, this time by the Throngler? Your parents didn't love you, did they? In an effort to escape my pursuer, not the pursuer, just this one, I climbed a ladder that just led to my death. Lovely. After that slap to the face, I upgraded my sword again and decided to take out my frustrations on the ruined sentinels. You might be able to tell if you look very closely at the boss health bar, but I was doing a little bit more damage than I was last time. The first sentinel goes down in no time, but I forgot that fall damage is absolutely insane in this game and paid the price. Always greedy, never punished, I take out the first sentinel again, and this time my strategy was to stay on the ledge for another sentinel to jump up. My plan was to get another sentinel low before I was doomed to be double teamed. I made it to the ground with a sliver of health and absolutely ruined the second sentinel, and it was down to a 1v1. Time to lock in. I don't think I've ever felt this powerful in a casual run of a FromSoft game. And just like that, the fight is over. Oh, she said the thing! More levels, more damage, baby. I explored beyond the ruined Sentinels arena and was greeted by a kind passerby before grabbing the bonfire. Seeing only more rooms with guys who explode and new ways to get to areas I've been before, I decided to just say hello to the neighbors and then continue on my way. I foolishly thought it was a good idea to pay a visit to the flaming pit of salamanders that shoot insta-kill fireballs and immediately regretted it. Produce the symbol of the king, produce this, idiot. I got some sublime bone dust and I really wish I knew what that did. I gave this guy some smelling salts and then fought Manny from Ice Age, who gave me his halberd and an Estus shard. But my brain could really only think of one place to go from here. Back to the gutter. Once the area was all lit up, it made traversal a breeze. With a torch in hand and careful footing, I made it to the next bonfire. I destroyed 12 pots that resembled the heart of Davy Jones, got a fragrant branch, and then advanced to the Black Gulch. This place sucks more than a Roomba, and honestly, it would be in contention for my least favorite places in the game if it wasn't so damn short. Yeah, you get poisoned instantly and invaded at the fog gate, but all in all, it's not a bad run. And it was time to face everyone's favorite writhing mass of flesh, the Rotten. The Rotten's attacks are slow and well telegraphed, like most bosses in this game, and well, we hit like a truck, but then again, so does he. Does this boss suck? Yes. But do I suck more? Also yes. But what sucks the most? The arena. I found myself dying to the fire more than anything, and sometimes I just knew I was cooked when I got hit back into a pit of fire and wasn't able to recover out of it before my health got instantly melted away. Positioning was key not only to not get hit, but if I was going to get hit, I didn't want to wind up taking a swim in a campfire. I played safe for single R1s and I would get out as fast as I could. The magic AoE on the Rotten himself was easy to dodge, but the overhead slash with the post-hit magic shockwave was a little bit harder to avoid. I got really close to victory but waltzed right into the flames, and no stop, drop, and rolling could save my crusty undead skin. But the next try, I got in there, gave it my all, and did the exact same thing. The Greatsword's rolling R1 seemed to be the saving grace of this fight, as I could do it at the end of my dodge, it hit hard, and it had a faster animation than the regular R1. I finally finished off the Rotten, and it felt like it took forever, and this was, by far, the most attempts I had taken on a boss up until this point. I lit the primal bonfire and took a trip back to Majula, where it was peaceful, quiet, safe, and where I could get some sweet, sweet levels. I went back to the Shaded Woods to Fragrant Branch this guy, thinking it was going to be another route I could take, but to my dismay, it was just some more sublime bone dust. I wish I knew what that did. I killed some more foes in this area, yes, including more enemies that I can't lock onto, before falling into a pit of basilisks, where I immediately ran away because it was very scary. I very bravely went through the area again, this time not falling through the floor, and I found myself at another fog gate. And on the other side, a super scary boss, a lady stuck in the ground. Just kidding, it's Quaylag's hot cousin. Time for Scorpioness Najka. What is it with Miyazaki and half-naked bug ladies? Not that I'm complaining or anything. She got some good hits in at the start, but that was just the wake-up call I needed. It was at this point where I was starting to feel a little bit overpowered. Either that or you just pump out huge damage numbers in Dark Souls 2. I can confidently say I did not feel like I needed to learn this boss. Between my life gems and oversized fly swatter, I was dealing way more damage than she knew what to deal with. She did have some pretty sweet magic attacks, and the burrowing move did do a lot of damage to me, but the arena was wide open and she was slow enough for me to be very greedy and take her out on the first try. After Bear Seeking, I wandered into the Doors of Pharos, where I challenged Babar to single combat. I won. I killed the little guys along my path and came out at Brightstone Cove to Seldora. I was tasked with doing my very best Indiana Jones impression, but the local townsfolk weren't very entertained by my performance. I traversed the home of some very upsetting looking spiders before saying hello to Prowling Magus and the congregation. The ads go down in about one hit each, and I was able to thin out the numbers very quickly. My moveset may be slow, but they're slower, and they let me life gem when I needed to. With his followers taken care of, I had no choice but to tell Magus they elected a new pope and his services were no longer needed. needed, and I was rewarded with a big fat Titanite chunk. I met Oswald of Cromwell, who told me I could come to him if I needed to say sorry for doing bad stuff. After that, I traversed the very fun area where everything wants to kill me. I guess that's just the whole game. But this place sucked especially with the casters and the burrowing basilisk and the invader with the dual avalons, and to top it all off, I was bamboozled by a candle pretending to be a bonfire. I was in a bad mood after that, so I had to take it out on Guthrie. It was a bit too chaotic for me, so I homeboned out of there, and on my way back, I may have accidentally stolen from the spiders and angered them, and they made sure I knew what I did. I decided to return the favor and squash some bugs, and one was so scared that it ran away in 10 FPS. I picked a different route this time, and wound up in a bigger room with even more upsetting spiders, and in a panic, I kited them out of there so I could take them on one by one, and some of them even died to the spikes. I like it when spikes affect enemies too. I killed Spider-Man, climbed the ladder, and found myself in a very sticky situation. It was a large spider web. I aimlessly fell down lower and lower before finding a fog gate that led me to the most upsetting spider of them all, the Duke's Deer Freya. If there's anything I hate more than spiders, it's a spider boss. And if there's anything I hate more than a spider boss, it's a spider boss with a bunch of little mini spider ads. I quickly learned that I wasn't able to damage Freya's tough exoskeleton, and I also learned that she loved to spam the magic laser. It was a brutal first attempt, and I will not be looking forward to the run back. Wait, pause. Who's that guy in the corner, you might ask? It's me, from the past. And the past dumbass deleted this portion of the recording, so I have to use the Twitch VOD with cheeks quality. While that dude yaps in the background, I will say that there's about a month's time between the previous recording and this one. There's a lot of, where am I? What am I doing? Should I go this way? Have I gone that way before? You know, classic Souls game stuff. I had also been playing a lot of Night Rain and actually beat the Duke's Deer Freya and the Smelter Demon in Night Rain before Dark Souls 2. Kinda messed up. After some more deaths to Freya, mostly due to having a hard time with the ads, I learned that a torch can scare them away. Not of my own brain power and experimentation, but from a chat message. Now, I'm not one for backseating, but I can't sit here and pretend like I didn't read it, so after going back into the fight with a fire stick, it was a lot more bearable. Freya, much like the other bosses in this game, doesn't have many moves. Although my initial instinct was to keep my distance and only go in for hits when the coast was clear, it became evident that staying in close and to the right of her head helped me avoid almost every attack, especially the laser. Her moves consist of grabbies, stompies, sploogies, laser, and what I like to call the seesaw. This fight made me realize that Papa might need a few more iframes as well. The one-handed moveset of the greatsword made it a little harder to hit her head considering it was a horizontal slash, but the trade-off being I didn't have to deal with ads, so it was more desirable. I was doing enough damage to where I beheaded her and had to resort to doing back shots on her behind head. It took everything in me not to be greedy, but finally Freya goes down and dethrones the Rotten as most attempts on a boss so far. With my adrenaline at a high, I went to immediately celebrate in typical Souls fashion and forgot that by two-handing my greatsword it means that I doused my torch and the spiders in the area were no longer held at bay. I panic ran to embrace the Great Soul, and then used my raid-infused greatsword to deal with the spiders. I said hello to what I can only imagine was Seath the Scaleless, and then killed a random hollow who was absorbed in a good book but kind enough to drop some goodies. I lit the primal bonfire and proceeded to aimlessly walk around without purpose because I couldn't remember for the life of me where I was going. But hey, at least I got an Estus shard and I joined Boba Fett in the Sarlacc pit. I'll spare you the boring parts, but you'll be glad to know that I busted down this wall and found a bonfire and a blacksmith. Mini Andre looked like he was down in the dumps, so I let him upgrade my sword to +10 and then lit his torch as a thank you. McDuff was super stoked and even played me a little tune on the anvil. Really makes me miss the Undead Parish. I met Gavlan in No Man's Wharf but didn't have enough money to wheel or deal. I went to the Shaded Woods and yored on this guy's branch and he was so excited he gave me a key. I then pulled off the greatest parkour of my entire life and then used said key to open the door and I smacked the shit out of Ornifex. I'm sorry, I thought she was an enemy. Her kind are enemies in Dark Souls 1. Anyway, I said I was sorry and then she told her to meet me at her place that was just up the road. Spoiler alert, her place is not just up the road. I also got distracted by the Doors of Pharos. I fed either side some yummy rocks before exploring down the way and running into my third mimic. Continuing on, I found a fog gate and stepped into the domain of Rat Dog. If there's one thing I hate in FromSoft games, it's dogs. Or rats. Both of them. This is a dog. This is not a rat. This is a dog. I have no idea why Stuart Little here reminded me of Sif. Maybe it's because you can't do much to give a rat, an interesting moveset. But it was just a game of be the dick and spam R1 until Rat Dog died. I was doing insane damage and old Remy, couldn't keep up with my +10 greatsword. I went to Majula to see my beloved and get some more iframes, and then when I returned to the Doors of Pharos, all the enemies were just bugged? Has this happened to anyone else? They just didn't aggro at all. I even homeboned back to the bonfire and reloaded the area and nothing. No idea what happened here, but hey, I'll take it. I finally fed the third rock face its dinner and went on to claim my prize. And it was just a chest. Throw that on a t-shirt. I unlocked the doors of Pharos and all I got was this lousy spear. I went back to the shaded woods to look for Ornifex and I stumbled upon a head. Vangarl's head to be specific. He told me his body was roaming around and that I should steer clear of engaging it in combat. Well, unlike him, I have a head and I'm good at using it. I kept talking to him and I think I already killed his body. My bad, dude. Anyway, he gave me his mask, which looked pretty cool, and I tried it on but never used it. I was fleeing some enemies down near Freya and I stumbled upon the abode of the bird lady, and I have a bone to pick with her. She said, "Oh, I live just up the road," not, "Hey, I'm neighbors with Freya." What the heck? Anyway, we chatted and I learned she could make boss weapons, so I got the Lost Sinner's sword. Just for style points. I never used it. I found myself another sublime bone dust, and this time I actually read what it did, and I promptly went to Majula to use all 3 to upgrade my flask. I talked to this lady who seemed to know me, but I have no memory of ever talking to her, but I slipped her a 20 so that she could move the path and clear my way to Huntsman's Copse. I made my way through the area, killing some losers as I went, and it felt really awesome to have a new area to explore, and also learn that gravity comes for us all, no matter where we are. I made the journey all over again, lit the bonfire that I was painfully close to, and decided to try to do the same thing a second time. Clearly, I'm very smart. The cops? Cops? No idea. The forest area was full of some very upsetting enemies, an invasion from Forlorn, and the home of the Skeleton Lords. Surely this would be a very fun boss fight. It was clear that the big skeletons were posing the largest threat to me, so they all go down with one R1 combo each, another W for the +10 sword. The next on the list for the scariest enemies in the vicinity were the bone wheel skeletons. But after those go down, it's just a matter of keeping my distance, not being greedy, and hacking away at the remainder of the bone bros. I honestly have no words for what that was. After that sorry excuse for a boss, I found myself venturing forth to Harvest Valley. And the name of that area might have frightened me if not for the lady that hath appeared before me. Yo, she got her feet out, chat. Chloanne definitely wanted to explore the crevices of my beef jerky complexion, but for now, it was time to press on. This area struck me as one of those, you're gonna want to just hold sprint and pray kind of areas. The poison mist, the big guys, the half-naked fire ladies, they all just kind of screamed, "Please, for the love of all that is holy, get me out of this place." I can't believe they made Blighttown again, but with zero visibility. I love the deranged ideas that just pop into the heads of those masochists over at From Software. On my way through to Earthen Peak, I made sure to give some of the fire ladies my number, but it turns out I was just getting catfished by the Covetous Demon. I don't even know if Jabba the Hutt here can even be considered a boss fight. I'm sure some nerd in my comment section is going to write me an 18-page dissertation about why the Covetous Demon is the cornerstone of Dark Souls 2 lore, but I simply don't care. Of all the bad fights so far, this one is by far the worst, and it ends so quickly that I can't even provide proper commentary. Press R1 and you win. I kind of think it's cool that rolling through poison causes it to stick to your character and cause continuous build-up, and I'm still not really sure if running around makes it wear off faster, but it's cool to see these things start in Dark Souls 2 and continue on to other Souls games and beyond. I cleared out some headless assholes, got real greedy for loot, and then failed to read a prompt that said set light and made myself look like an idiot in front of a live studio audience. I burned the large wheel that was clearly a symbol for the never-ending cycle of production and capitalism, and I still have no idea what the hell this did. It was here that I learned Quelaag's family tree was much larger than I thought it was, and we run into her second cousin twice removed, Mitha. I mean, she's not really a bug, but it's like, you know, lady top, not lady bottom. I think the joke still lands. I know I keep saying this, and I'm sorry for sounding like a broken record, but I did not learn this boss. I was doing 525 damage per R1. I saw exactly 4 of her moves. Absolutely I was greedy, and absolutely I was not punished. That might have actually been faster than the Covetous Demon. I took the elevator up to Iron Keep, got the bonfire, and then warped to Majula to get some levels and try on some new drip. Deeply upsetting. Back in the Iron Keep, I opened the door and I was greeted by Sharon, who I disposed of quickly. The Elan Knights were quite something, and the sheer range that they could aggro from actually blew me away. Also, fire is hot. I was minding my own undead business and Dennis decided to come over and teach me that Dark Souls 2 PvP is still very much alive. It would have been a fun fight, but Dennis was a cringe little caster and just barely won our first encounter. Dennis invades for round 2, and this time I have my wits about me. I used the sword to my advantage and played aggressively, making sure he didn't have any time to cast his Nurge. I came out victorious and felt very good about myself. Exploring the area was hard with all the Elan Knights around and, you know, the doors that just lead to fire, but I found a little merchant who made a nice home for himself in the lava pits of despair and decided to buy a new pair of pants. Thanks, Megarold. Time to get back on track, with the Elan Knights aggroing from so far away they're barely rendered in. I patiently took them out while pulling some levers, getting some back shots, making my way to a fog gate and preparing for cinema. Oh wow, I can't believe the Smelter Demon was so popular in Night Rain that they brought it to Dark Souls 2. I still can't believe I beat the Smelter Demon for the first time in Night Rain. I'm ashamed of myself. Believe it or not, I found this guy's attacks better telegraphed in Elden Ring. I got smacked around early in the fight and spent so much time trying to heal up that the old smelt it dealt it demon chipped me down to nothing. I feel like I may have glossed over just how much I hate this area, but the run back to the boss is something out of nightmares. You have the 5 or so regular Alon Knights that have the katanas and a very fast moveset and aggro on you before you're even done loading in at the bonfire. Then you have the 3 archers that just sit there and wait, peppering you with arrows as you attempt to approach. The only way I could maintain my sanity and my full health bar going into the boss fight was to slowly take them out one by one. It's a good thing the Smelter Demon didn't take too many more tries. This is one of the only bosses in the game where it felt like being greedy was a bad thing. With the slow moveset of my sword, even with big damage, I often found myself stuck in the end lag of the attacks and unable to get out of the way to avoid the retaliation. I know I complained about this earlier, but so many times in this boss fight I felt like I had dodged the attack only to look over and see most of my health bar missing. I would much rather my character get absolutely Looney Tunes tossed around the arena at the speed of light than make me a fool thinking I was good at the game. My winning strategy was not locking onto the boss and staying near the dump truck, strafing as many attacks as I could and only taking hits when I knew it was absolutely safe. And even then, instead of taking a punish window, I would use this time to life gem safely. With a much slower and calculated mindset, the Smelter Demon goes down and I can finally have the satisfaction of taking him out on his own turf. Pushing onwards through the Iron Keep, I fed the wall a cookie and took a ladder up to talk to the little chap guarding the bell. The lore went in one ear and out the other, and clearly I was supposed to go through the fog and not stay back. I soon learned that Belfry Sol was a PvP area and I got invaded by myself. From the future. Iceman had no counter for my stone-cold two-handed moveset and I sent him to the morgue. I'm honestly so happy to get to experience some PvP in a Souls game. Au natural. Really gets my blood pumping. The rest of the area is as you'd expect, but I rang the bell and then went on my way. Very cool Dark Souls 2, I love a good little PvP area. What I didn't love, however, was the next part of the Iron Keep. More levers, archers, Alon Knights, lava, fire traps. It was kinda like Sen's Fortress, but not. I mean, only like Sen's in the sense that it has traps, and it's not actually anything like Sen's Fortress. I really want them to bring back mid-area fog gates. I love the excitement and fear that this could be more level with a bonfire nearby, or it could be a boss that rocks my socks off and sends me packing. Lucky for me, it was the former, and my new sword makes quick work of Franklin and friends. I am running out of turtle jokes. I found myself a little bonfire and pulled the lever to disable the traps and proceeded on to the fog gate where I met the man himself. Oh, cutscene boss. It's gonna be absolute cinema. Just kidding, it's the old Iron King. Stranded in a small arena with the boss just out of reach, this fight kinda felt like, what if Ceaseless Discharge was cool? The old Iron King has a very slow slam attack with plenty of time for punishing, you know, once you learn the timings, a big wind-up fire breath that you can strafe easily to the right, and then a horizontal slash followed by a slam. He may be immune to lava damage, but the old greatsword was enough to melt him. Old Iron King? More like old Butter King, the way I'm cutting through him like a hot knife. The large AoE fire on the ground was slow enough to give time to run to the little back portion of the arena, and the Palm Blast is just one big punish window. And I played the fight extra carefully when I saw a wind-up that I hadn't seen yet before. Like the double fist slam mega explosion move. Patent pending. One slam combo later and a slap on the wrist, the old Iron King gets dethroned. Clearly a boss fight wasn't scary enough, because just after the old Iron King I got jump scared by a bonfire. Good old Aldia introduced himself to me and gave me a lore dump that I couldn't quite pay attention to because I think I was having a heart attack. I lit the primal bonfire and made my way back to Majula to talk to my fair maiden. This time she didn't bear seek lest, she told me to go to the castle. And I had no idea whatsoever what castle she was referring to. I played some Fashion Souls with the Alon Knight armor that I had unintentionally farmed and then made my way out to try and find this keep. She said it was over a hill and through the forest, and I took this at face value, which put me back at Huntsman's Copse because I remembered a rope bridge that I hadn't crossed yet. Some real assholes were blocking the way and they demanded my lunch money. So the next time I went through, I decided to do the honorable thing and run past everything, clenching my cheeks and holding sprint until I made it out the other side. But I quickly learned that the old rickety rope bridge wasn't up to code. The Undead Purgatory didn't sound too inviting, but I showed this guy that my sword was cooler than his and traversed the fog gate. Cutscene boss, it's a cutscene boss time. The cutscene's immediate focus on the lever and the portcullis gave me the only clue I needed and a mission to execute right away. Also, it was very reminiscent of those chariots in Elden Ring, and I ran from those all the time. Using the architecture to my advantage, I used the chariot to take out the skeletons and made my way to the lever before getting trampled. The executioner's chariot had nothing on me. This was my Maximus moment. This was my chance for glory. The horse was nothing without the rider. Weak, frail, helpless, nothing to do. And oh hey, there's a pit in the arena. That's fun. The second time's the charm, I pulled the lever and wasted no time killing the skellies and kicking the horse while it was down. I didn't care to dodge and I only had greed in my eyes as I kept spamming R1 to send this horse back to the glue factory. Don't worry, it's just a joke, they don't make glue out of horses anymore. Bear seek lest, it was time for more levels and life gems, but I was still no closer to finding the castle. Out of ideas, I went back to the things betwixt and used a smelly stick of yonder to finally see what was behind this fog. I got an Estus flask shard and killed Moto before finally getting another visit from the pursuer. I am the pursuer now. He didn't stand a chance. I hopped in the coffin thinking it was a classic FromSoft warp to a new area, and I stood there for a bit confused as it appeared nothing had happened. And then I found out that the coffin changes your things betwixt. Like it changes your character's... Never mind. Who's up betwixting their things right now? I spent a while trading my smooth and silky items with Dinah and Tilo and didn't get anything remarkable, but it's always fun to trade with the crows. I explored the shaded woods and found my way forward and interacted with the Shrine of Winter. We will be saving that for later. I pressed onwards through the woods and met my crush outside Drain Lake Castle, and she told me she only dates cool heroes who brave the horrors ahead and make it out alive. You know a game's getting serious when your comfy NPC meets you outside a cold, dark, rainy castle. The front door to the castle was actually kinda cool. I had to kill some enemies near these giants and they would suck the souls from my foes in order to open it up. I went up the stairs and met a spooky ghost man who asked me some questions and then told me Vendrick was missing. By the hand of the queen. T. I found myself a little bonfire and then made my way into a pitch black room with more fun doors that I had to feed souls to while getting jumped from every direction. Ooh, it's that part of a game where a previous boss is now just a common enemy. We did it, we're in the late game now. I opened what looked like the way forward and cautiously made my way through in fear that any statue could come alive at any moment and start to beat my ass. I found a chest that was so clearly a trap and decided today was not, in fact, my day. I was not opening that. Then I saw a portrait of the Queen Nashandra that applied curse buildup when I got too close to it. I'm sure that's not an omen or indicator of any big plot twist or bamboozle that's gonna happen later on. I got invaded and found out this late in the game that I could actually get hit during my riposte animation. What a fair and balanced system that I've come to love and enjoy. Near the top of the castle I found Nashandra, and we had a lively little chat. She seemed very nice and hospitable, and she's definitely not a projection or something that would be hiding her true nature. Right after the lore dump, I was thrust into battle with the Dragon Riders. That's right, plural this time. And one has a bow. That's what I call variety. My first attempt did not go so hot. On my second attempt, the guy shooting arrows thought it would be much more fun on the floor instead of the platform and jumped down immediately. The Dragon Riders aren't too tough, but my brain is quite small and my attempt to focus down one Dragon Rider and then the other was in vain because I kept forgetting which was which. The old tried and true strategy of being greedy and spamming life gems worked out, and I just took a hit whenever I could. I don't have anything profound to say. I do big damage, I face tank hits, I come out on top. I lit the next bonfire and talked to my friend who I completely remembered the name of. I don't have to say it or anything because we're super close and he totally knows that I know it. He told me that his sword was super big and cool and that only a true man could wield it. Same here, bro. I found a hidden lever very graciously pointed out by an online Super Sleuth player, but for now I had to take the latter. It was time to help a giant make another punch bowl of souls, so I got some friends together to help me get the party started, and it activated the elevator. Oh look, it's another boss that's now an enemy! I get that it's cool to have these moments and I do genuinely enjoy them most of the time, but why the hell is there a double horse with no rider just in the grand hall of a castle? Make it make sense. I accidentally intruded on a Flame Lady slumber party, but before they got mad, I apologized and saw myself out. I found my first real mimic and was embraced by a love hug from one of my favorite Dark Souls enemy types. They really dropped the ball on mimics in Elden Ring. It wiggled its butthole at me for some reason, and I was willing to let bygones be bygones, but that was taking it a step too far, so it was time to turn this chest into wood chips. I went up an elevator and was met with a dude with a keyhole face and a lady trapped in a cage. Hang in there for now, lady. I got the key to the King's Passage and then I went on my way. Back down the elevator, the King's Passage was opened, but Seabiscuit and his friends tried to send me packing the way I came. I thought these guys could only move in L's. After nearly getting trampled, it was time to confront the owner of the stables, the Looking Glass Knight, and holy this boss is sick. Don't get me wrong, I love bosses that are monsters, creatures, dragons, or something else from the depths of the FromSoft archive, but there's just something about a big dude in armor with a gargantuan sword that gets my blood pumping. It took me a hot minute to get the timing right on my dodges, but the attacks from this big hunk of metal were pretty slow and honestly didn't hit as hard as I thought. The cinema moment finally came when he planted his shield down and summoned a nerd from the Mirror Realm. I couldn't believe this guy was a scrub who used summons and I had to teach him a lesson. The big flashy magic attacks were all extravagance and no execution, easily avoided. Something I have noticed during this entire playthrough though is with the right positioning, specifically circling a boss to the right, they really don't know what to do and most of their attacks can be avoided. This fight made me feel like a badass, and with big damage from the superb sword, the Looking Glass Knight goes down first try. He even tried to summon again. filthy casual. I took the elevator down and channeled my inner Nicolas Cage before lighting a bonfire and stepping foot into the Shrine of Amana. Before venturing forth though, I went to Majula to get some levels, and for the first time, there is no bear seek lest. I already bore sucked. We're in the end game now. It's shrine time, baby. Now, some people say the Shrine of Amana is the worst area in the entire game, and I honestly just didn't feel like that. There was lovely singing coming from the house, and the enemies were weak, spaced sparsely, and went down easily. The little lizard guys were kind of upsetting, but I finally pressed on and made my way out into the boss. Oh, wait. There's more of the shrine? Oh. Surely it can't be too bad. I scoped out my surroundings, and as soon as I showed my face, I started getting sniped by spells that defied the logic of time and space and would weave in and out of architecture to pursue me. Oh, but don't forget the lizards. Can't forget the lizards. This area had my heart pumping more than some boss fights. I was constantly in fear of getting pelted by magic spam, all while trying to fight other enemies and traverse the murky water. After running around panicked and unable to get my bearings, I had the greatest epiphany of my entire life. I have a shield. And it's called the Cleric's Parma. Remember that one? And it was built for this very occasion because I read the item description and the Cleric's Parma can parry spells. Unfortunately, this is a game that hates fun and the spells parried don't deflect back to the caster, but hey, at least it's something. With this newfound equipment and courage, I was making my way through the shrine with sure footing. Slowly, yes, but methodically, calculated. Taking out enemies and parrying spells. That was until Dark Spirit Stars decided they would take it upon themselves to ensure personally that I was going to uninstall this game. Why are you invading me? In the Shrine of Amana. I just want a word. Stars, if you're out there, I really just hope that you piss your pants in the middle of a very important life moment. Stars was no ordinary invader, you see, because they were a cheater. They were hacking, an unkillable force preventing me from advancing further into the shrine. Unless, I don't know, maybe there is an item in the game where when I get your health bar to 0, you sit down for a little bit, regenerate your full health, and then come back and one-shot me. This person invaded me not once, but twice. I mean, it was a different username, but the exact same build and everything, and I died the same exact way. Why don't you just duel me like a true warrior? Pair this numbskull with the countless other deaths I had to ensue, and you know what? I get it. I understand it now. Whoever made this area just hates people and fun and probably life and everything ever. Because the Shrine of Amana is the worst area that I have experienced in any Souls game, by far. I would rather play an entire game based on Blighttown than go through any more of this area. Holy, there's more. There's more? There's more. At least there's a bonfire. I run through the little mushroom bug things and find out they just drain your durability, so that's fun. There is absolutely no way that I am dealing with any more of this area, and there is only one solution for that problem. Hold sprint and pretend nothing exists. Spells flung at me? Don't care. Enemies lurking in the shadows? Don't care. An invader at the end of the area? Don't care. I saw a fog gate, and even though it's likely that it's a boss, this is the light at the end of the tunnel that I've been waiting for. It was the Demon of Song, one of the more upsetting looking things in this game, and lucky for me, every time it pulled its hood over its head, it was immune to my attacks. Unfortunately for me, my first attempt to circumcise this grotesque cross between a frog and the lady from the Things Betwixt ended in failure, and I'm pretty sure I just joined the Dark Souls 2 equivalent of the Pinwheel Hall of Shame. And it might have happened more than once. You know, they say patience is a virtue, and it was time for me to slow down and give some respect to a boss. Not that this one deserved it more than any of the others, but if I was gonna go through and continue beating the game, my mantra of always greedy, never punished might need a revamp. I was being greedy, and I was getting punished every time. I decided to take my sweet time and dance along to the demon's song. I took my shots when I could and made sure I was topping up my health when there was an opening that I couldn't punish with the sword. To be honest, it made for a pretty boring fight, and I wasn't a fan of this boss in general. But they can't always be bangers. They have to give us some slop so that we can appreciate the absolute peak. The covetous demon, the demon of song, the rats, the skeletons, they're all just put in place so that we can appreciate the masterful game design when it comes. Lots of chip and chase, and locking in later, the Seaman of Dong sang its final solo. I took the elevator down and got another Aldia jump scare. Who does this guy think he is, the scholar of the first sin? Anyway, I channeled my inner Sora and took the key to the embedded to free the lady, and all I got was this lousy ring that makes me not look like beef jerky. I'm sure there's some lore in there somewhere. Finally, it was time for me to go to the Undead Crypt, and this place was pretty boring, so here are the highlights. I ran and rolled, talked to the edgy guy who was afraid of the light, rang some bells, ran some more, got a bonfire, ran some more, fell down a hole, appreciated the architecture, and approached a fog gate. Oh baby, it's a cutscene boss! Feldstadt's boss design is peak. Big guy in big armor? Check. Big weapon? Check. That's really the only two that get my neurons activated. This dude honestly reminded me of Paladin Leroy from Dark Souls 1 because of the Grant-like hammer, but that is the only similarity. I was so caught up in the peak of it all that guess what? I got greedy, and I was punished for it. I was so ready to end the fight, and in true Dark Souls fashion, the boss is left on 1 HP. Turns out Veldstat was the protagonist in this timeline. Try number 2 was a lot better. New run, new me, new mental, no greed, no problems, all zen. I love the moveset of this boss. Magic mixed with physical weapon attacks is always cool. And the bell tolling for the fight gave me a weird nostalgic feeling for playing Dark Souls 1 online. Just in the world and being able to hear people ring those bells just makes me all warm and fuzzy inside. But on the outside, a stone-faced killer with the mask of the mannequin with a huge sword doing huge damage. Sorry Veldstat, but I'm the protagonist and you're merely a stride in my marathon. I'm the one who ended you, but you will be forgotten in the long list of adversaries that I had to overcome to fulfill my duties as bearer of the curse. I pressed on to the next room and was met with a harrowing sight, a figure I could only assume was Vendrick, mindlessly wandering in the depths of the crypt. Is this what Nishandra did to the king? To her husband? I should have listened to the lore more. I got the king's ring and some guidance from Miss Harold before ultimately leaving King Vendrick where he was. It didn't feel right to kill him in his current state. I put on the king's ring, opened the door, and entered the Throne of Want. I love a good cinematic run to the fog. The Throne Watcher and Defender saw how much I enjoyed the run to their arena, and they let me do it again. The Watcher and Defender proved to be a problem for my small pea brain, and the slow moveset of the Greatsword really showed its true colors in fights with more than one enemy. But this time I was determined. I took my time and played more defensively, looking for windows that I could punish safely. I decided to focus the Watcher as it felt like I was doing way more damage to them, but the Defender was always close by. The life gem spam was enough to keep me alive in a few instances, and I slowly got the Watcher on the back foot and then killed them during their buff phase. Seeing as how they were downed and not dead, I immediately thought of the twin princes and knew I was on the clock to kill the Defender. Unfortunately for me, I wasn't fast enough and the Watcher came back with full health and a vengeance. Pressed for time, I played more aggressively, and lucky for me, I kept the Watcher busy enough that by the time they went to go give the Defender a chug jug, it was GG's. After this boss, I decided to explore some more and remembered that I hadn't opened all the doors in that one room with the giant and the punch bowl. So I started clearing it out and opening up as much as I could. I fell down a hole in the floor and found the John Dark Souls 2 armor that I opted to stash away because I think the Elan Knight armor looks cool. Back in the Lost Bastille, I got the ultimate hit of nostalgia dopamine in the form of the Belfry gargoyles. Different design, same music. It was peak. Maybe this is what sequel fans feel like when the entire reboot is all about how many references we can make in the span of one movie. The Greatsword made short work of the little guys, but I was really happy to have found the fight. I found myself in the Shaded Woods where I completely forgot there was a door that required the King's Ring, and I stepped through to Aldia's Keep. I let myself in and made myself at home and saw a bunch of messages on the ground warning me not to pull a lever. So I pulled a lever. The other guy in the house also did not appreciate me pulling the lever, and I think he implied he would hunt me for sport. I found out where the Looking Glass Knight gets his recruits, and they were very pissed off that I put them out of a job. I used a fragrant branch on Mu Deng. Yes, this is her. Feel old yet? And I also encountered a deeply upsetting, very large basilisk. Luckily, it just kind of sat there and spat at the wall. I pulled Ye Old Dragon lever and carefully made my way through the hallway before finding an illusory wall and a bonfire. Also, why do you have to press A on illusory walls in this game? I missed when it was just a smack. And I know the Pharos Lockstone's illusory walls are just a smack, but I wish they were all just a smack. I got jump scared by a hippo, and then jump scared by another hippo, and oh, there's Navlan. Hey buddy, I'll be ignoring you and just entering the fog gate. Lucky for me, if you've fought one dragon in Souls games, you've pretty much fought every dragon in Souls games. Unlucky for me, I got double hit by the fire breath hitbox and then absolutely sniped by a meteor made of magma. Take 2 at the dragon, and the fire really is the only deadly thing about this encounter. I was only able to avoid it if I noticed it fast and sprinted right away, but I'm getting old and my reaction time needs some work. Down on the ground in melee combat, this dragon fight is much more manageable. It just does slow stomps, leaving it open for big punishes, and just like that, the Guardian Dragon services are no longer needed. I took the longest elevator ride in FromSoft history and then accidentally sent it back down, so there's a few minutes of my life I'm never getting back. Up in the dragon area, I met up with the Emerald Herald and she gave me a token of her gratitude, the Aged Feather. I took a super sick zipline and crossed the longest rope bridge I've ever seen while ignoring Navlan, and then I got jump scared by Aldia once again. I love me some lore time. I progressed through the dragon shrine, and these dragon dudes are suckers for watching a good fight, so I gave each one of them an excellent showing of my skill. Yeah, the dragon guys are just chill like that. I made it further, and I guess it was time to frickin' duel to assert my dominance and secure my place as top dog Sigma Alpha. I walked right up to this guy and absolutely embarrassed him in front of all of his friends. Twice in a row. I am the leader of the dragons now. I have a sneaking suspicion that the murk is shifted and stirred. I talked to the big mama dragon and she gave me the Ashen Mist heart and refused to elaborate. Then it was off to the Forest of Fallen Giants to use the heart thingy to enter the memory of Jeg. It was an absolutely cinematic fight against the Giant Lord. Big wind-ups, slow attacks, great windows for punishing, and it almost reminds me of a boss that I had encountered earlier. I think he was a giant too, I can't remember though. I got greedy and traded with the boss on the final hit, and we both died at the same exact time, making it one for the ages. Nah, just kidding. He lived, and I died. But I killed him the next time, picked up a soul of a giant, and exited the memory. Now, I didn't really know what a soul of a giant was for, so I might have popped it for souls. Oops. I was quickly informed by my Twitch chat to please not pop the rest of them. I went into the other memories, collected more giant souls, and then I remembered the key item that I got from the Giant Lord allowed me to access something in the throne room. I went back to the castle, opened the door, and the Emerald Herald was waiting for me. And there, after 23 hours of gameplay, she finally told me her name. Shanalot. She warned me about Nashandra, but it didn't matter. I was ready, and I was gonna do it for you, Shanalot. I equipped the larger life gems that I had been hoarding for my entire playthrough and got ready for the trial ahead. I was offered help from friends that I made along the way, but I had to finish this how I started it. Alone. I entered the new fog gate blocking the throne room and came face to face with Nashandra in her true form. Cutscene boss. Oh, and I guess she is kind of cursed after all. Nashandra's boss design is phenomenal. I love a good scythe. And proximity curse buildup? Call this Coldstone, because I gotta have it. The Ring of Binding was incredible for this fight, once again because it kept the max HP loss from the curse buildup at bay. Her attacks were fairly basic and she didn't move around much, but when you come to that final boss of a Souls game, there's always that adrenaline. The heart rate gets going and you have that urge to win. After seeing her magic abilities, I decided to stay in close as the scythe was easier for me to dodge. I used Radiant Life Gems to counteract the constant damage from curse, and I only took attacks when I thought it was absolutely safe. I had one hand on my sword and one hand on the cleric's parma just in case there were any unexpected spells that I might have to parry. And despite my health getting low and some close calls, my life gem spam was enough to keep me going and beat Nashandra on the first try. I was the bearer of the curse and the new king. I took my place on the throne, not knowing what it would mean for the lore implications, but I knew it was what Shanalot wanted me to do, and I don't know about you, but I listen to women.
Look at this dumbass. He didn't even kill the Scholar of the First Sin.
You didn't even kill the Dark Lurker. Unsub, dislike, 7 hate comments, and cancelled.
Okay, sue me. Don't sue me. There were some loose ends to tie up. How was I supposed to know what to do, huh? It was time to beat the game for real. I used a soul vessel and respect my character so that I could power stance 2 great swords. This is where I learned, although power stancing looks pretty cool, it might not be that worth it, at least in my case. I swapped a lot between power stancing and not power stancing, so I'm just getting it out of the way now. I burned a bonfire ascetic at the King's Gate and opened the door for Throne Watcher and Defender round 2. I talked about this fight already, no need for more of my rambling, but as soon as the Watcher and Defender were dead, it thrust me right into the Nashandra fight, and I used the Aged Feather to get out to not repeat my mistakes. After leveling up, it was time to go back to the king and put him out of his misery, although with only 2 giant souls in hand, the damage was not looking very promising. I went to the gutter again in search of a giant soul and ran into my good friend Lucatiel, who I hadn't seen in a while. She told me she's doing very well, and I definitely should not be concerned for her well-being. I did some lovely parkour and sent 2 giants back to the memories they came from while getting my do more damage to Vendrick item in the process. I thought I was the smartest person in the world when I used 2 bonfire aesthetics at the memory of Jeg, thinking that killing the Giant Lord a couple more times would award me with more giant souls. It did not, and I didn't notice until an embarrassing amount of time later. The only other giant soul accessible to me was acquired by killing the ancient dragon, and I couldn't bring myself to do it, so it's time to kill Vendrick with what we got. If I could sum up this fight in one word, it would be boring. All I did was stay at his left hip and I was able to avoid 90% of attacks. I barely even needed to roll, and to be honest, the only times I died, it was just because I was fighting him with piss poor damage and it took so long that I zoned out, only to be snapped back to reality by an unexpected backstep. Vendrick doesn't have that many moves and he really is just a mindless zombie, and his strategy was to bring me down to his brain level and beat me with experience. But I wisened up, locked in, and before long my pitiful swings brought the king to his knees. I still feel kinda bad. All bro did was fall in love with a goth girl. With Vendrick down and Aldia in sight, there was still one more name on my hit list, the Dark Lurker. I fell down the floor in the shaded woods and found Dark Diver Grandal, who wanted to give me an all-access pass to his dark hole. I entered his dark chasm of old, and oh boy, NPC fights. I love me some NPC fights. Basically, the goal is to enter the dungeon, clear out the gank fest with the NPCs, waste a flame butterfly to light a brazier, and then exit through the spooky fog floor. I did not know I had to light the brazier on my first try, so I had to go through again. Grandal has 2 other locations besides this one where you have to go and do the same thing. If you die by any means, you have to bribe Grandal with a human effigy to open the hole again. And I'm kinda glad I never used mine. I knew they'd have a use. I went through the last well of darkness and ran into Havel, and on my way out to tell Grandal the good news, I was not warp health back to safety, but dropped into the Dark Lurker's arena. The Dark Lurker's design is really cool, and some of the attacks hit me for way more than I was expecting, especially the Meteor Strike. The slow slashes of the magic sword and the orbital laser were easy enough to dodge, but after getting the boss to around half health, I certainly did not expect it to undergo mitosis and start dishing out ranged magic attacks while I'm engaged in honorable melee combat. This runback might be the worst in the base game. First, you have to give Peepaw a human effigy, then you have to clear out all the NPCs once again before you're finally able to challenge the boss. I was mentally prepared to be very angry about this runback, but thankfully on my second try, I got very lucky. I was able to get Mr. Lurker down to half health very quickly and without sustaining much damage. And then at the moment of multiplication at the quantum level, I was able to dish out a slash faster than the speed of light and hit both Dark Lurkers at the same time, the instant they split apart. It dealt catastrophic amounts of damage. It was clear that I was now the Lurker, and this cheap imitation, my prey. I was one with the dark, and the former Dark Lurker tried to run away, but it couldn't escape the calculated hits from my phenomenal sword. But it didn't go down without one last personal f*** you. With the Lurker and Vendrick taken care of, there was only one thing left to do. Kill Aldia. Damn it, I mean kill Nashandra. There were definitely no New Game Plus Nashandra incidents. She did not kill me repeatedly, and I was able to dispatch her again on the first try. Don't pay attention to what's on the screen right now. Stop that. After killing the queen yet again, Mr. Scholar came to say hello, and he started monologuing, trying to confuse me with his lore, but I was ready to throw hands. I was expecting something awesome, and instead I got, I don't know, maybe like the Bed of Chaos if it had 3 other moves and could slowly teleport around the arena and do insane AoE damage. At this point, I kinda wish I had some ranged magic. It took me a little bit to understand my openings, and even then I was getting absolutely blasted by New Game Plus damage. Pair that with my pure greed and determination to finish the game, and you get a cocktail that leads to many deaths. And to top it all off, the explosion when he teleported was an insta-kill. One attempt I got so close, but I couldn't control my dark passenger and ultimately paid the price. But after a few attempts, this pile of branches didn't have a single move I couldn't conquer, nothing left up his sleeve to surprise me with, and before long I schooled the Scholar and got him expelled. An absolutely cinema cutscene to finish a peak Souls game. I enjoyed myself throughout this playthrough, and although there were some hiccups, some things I didn't like, some mechanics that took a while to get used to, at the end of it all, I can confidently say that this was a great game. I feel like it gets judged too harshly by people, myself included, who go into it expecting an experience like Dark Souls 1 or 3. And when we immediately see some of the mechanics and quirks of it, it's an immediate turnoff. But I remember playing Dark Souls 1 for the first time and complaining about the same things just in different ways. I learned to get used to them and to overcome the awkwardness, but now we have new things to adapt to, and instead of playing it out, it's a write-off because it's not the same as before. And in some cases, requires a whole new way of approaching things. And at the end of the day, Dark Souls 2 paved the way for many mechanics that got polished and improved over time and are still used in FromSoft's recent titles. There was much more in this game that I loved than I didn't, and I always hold playing a Souls game for the first time in high regard. If you like it, that's awesome. If you hate it, that's awesome too. I'm not going to tell you what you should and shouldn't like, but don't try to yuck my yum. I will play the DLCs, and I'm excited for that, but for the sake of brevity and getting this video out sooner than later, I'm cutting it there for now. I hope you enjoyed. Subscribe for more. Thank you to the members for supporting the channel, and I'll catch you in the next one. Hopefully it won't take 4 months.